Yu is a young and kind boy who suffered from a tough childhood. His parents didn't treat him with love and care like most parents do. They compared him to a demon and constantly verbally abused him. Sadly, the verbal abuse quickly escalated to physical abuse, and at one point, Yu's father even tried to kill him. Though he managed to survive, he lost his parents in the process. Afterward, Yu was taken to an orphanage where he met the director who introduced him to Mika and other kids. Although they were welcoming and kind, Yu was still traumatized by his past experiences and couldn't bring himself to trust anyone. He believed that he didn't need a family since he already had one and suffered terribly from it. Despite Yu's reluctance to socialize, the other kids in the orphanage made their best efforts to befriend him and help him whenever he needed it. Eventually, Yu began to open up and started to see them as his new family. However, their happy lives were soon disrupted by a deadly virus that killed everyone who was 13 years old or older. Yu and the other young kids were the only ones who survived, but their safety didn't last long. Vampires took advantage of the situation and captured the kids to raise them as livestock. The orphanage was no exception, and they were all transported to a subterranean city. Now, 4 years later, Yu and the other kids are forced to donate their blood every day. But he's sick and tired of living on this human farm. He wants to escape. While venting to Mika, they suddenly witness two vampires cruelly stepping on and kicking a couple of young kids who had been innocently drawing on the floor. Yu's heart ached at the sight, and he couldn't bear to see the children suffer. Driven by anger and courage, he charged at the vampires to protect the kids. However, Yu was just a 12-year-old boy, and he was no match for the powerful, grown-up vampires. One of them grabbed Yu and dangled him over the edge of the walkway, threatening to drop him. Mika, terrified of losing his friend, frantically tried to apologize for Yu's actions, but the vampires paid him no heed. Just when all seemed lost, Farid, a noble vampire, appeared and stopped the others from hurting Yu. Mika greeted Farid with a smile, and the noble vampire invited him to his mansion that night. Mika agreed, leaving Yu puzzled about his friend's connection to the vampire noble. That evening, as Yu lay on the rooftop, one of the orphans called him in for dinner. Inside, the kids were overjoyed to be eating curry, and the one cooking told them to thank Mika for providing it. Yu noticed Mika's absence and inquired about it, only to learn that he had gone to Farid's mansion. He realized that Mika must have traded his blood for the ingredients to make the curry, and the thought left him unable to enjoy the meal. When Mika returned home later that night, Yu confronted him. Excitedly, Mika revealed that he had stolen a map and a gun from Farid's mansion, giving them a chance to escape this prison. Filled with hope, they woke up the other kids and made their way through the underground city toward freedom. Just as they were about to reach the exit, Farid emerged, happily explaining that he had allowed them to explore his mansion and find an escape route only to cruelly dash their hopes at the last moment. He then proceeded to mercilessly kill the children one by one, until only Mika and Yu remained. Determined to save his friend, Mika grabbed the gun and attacked Farid, only to be impaled by the vampire's hand. Mika told Yu to run, but instead, Yu picked up the gun and shot Farid in the head. As Mika collapsed in his pool of precious blood, Yu desperately tried to drag him to safety, but Mika pushed him away, urging him to leave while he still could. With tears streaming down his face and covered in Mika's blood, Yu fled the underground city. When he finally emerged, he encountered Gurren and his team from the Moon Demon Company, a human military group fighting against the vampires. Gurren labeled Yu as the hidden weapon from the Hyakuya orphanage and offered him a chance to fight alongside them. Heartbroken and full of rage, Yu clung to Gurren, vowing to become their weapon and destroy every vampire in existence in memory of his lost family. 4 years had passed since Yu lost his family to the vampires, and his heart had grown cold and angry. He was afraid to make new friends, fearing he might lose them too. Gurren, who had taken Yu in, placed him in a military school but hadn't spoken to him since. Desperate for attention, Yu tried to find a way to get suspended, hoping Gurren would call him to fight. Out of the blue, Shinoa, Yu's classmate, poked him and told him he needed to behave. She delivered a message from Gurren. Yu wouldn't be allowed to join the army until he made a friend. After class, Shinoa gave Yu a note from Gurren, which irritated him. As he left, Shinoa followed him, explaining that she needed to write a report on his behavior. Suddenly, they heard a commotion and found their classmate Yoichi being bullied. Yu initially ignored the situation, but when the bully called Yoichi livestock, he couldn't help but remember the vampire's cruel taunts. Shinoa warned him that Gurren wouldn't accept him if he attacked civilians. As a result, he gets beaten up and becomes bullied kid number 2. While running errands for the bullies, Yoichi shared his reason for joining military school. He wanted to avenge his sister, who was killed by a vampire while protecting him. You bluntly told Yoichi he was too weak to join the army, which nearly brought Yoichi to tears. An explosion suddenly rocked a nearby building, and sirens blared a warning about an escaped vampire. Shinoa told the boys to find safety while she contacted the Moon Demon Company. You made up his mind to prove his worth to Guren. His heart pounding with anticipation and fear, he sprinted back into the school. Picking up his sword, he entered a classroom, where he found the vampire about to sink her fangs into a student. You intervened just in time, and the vampire shifted her attention to you, deciding to drink his blood instead. The vampire displays her incredible agility and strength, evading Yu's sword strikes and attacking ferociously with her razor-sharp nails. As the vampire lunged toward the girl she had initially targeted, Yoichi appeared out of nowhere, driven by his newfound courage. He tackled the vampire, distracting her and giving you a brief opening to attack. The vampire, angered by the interruption, lashed out at Yoichi, but you intercepted her with his sword. The vampire grabbed you by the throat and leaped out of a window with him. In midair, you managed to stab her in the abdomen, causing her to howl in pain. The vampire, though weakened, mocked you, saying she would drink his blood to regain her strength before the Moon Demon Company could arrive. Just as she prepared to do so, Guren appeared, plunging his cursed blade into her heart and ending her life. When you ask Guren to let him into the company already, Guren replies that he hates brats who do not understand teamwork and refuses. Just then, Yoichi sees you. Yoichi hugs you, crying about how worried he was, but he knocks you out. Shinoa points out that Guren will now have to keep his promise since you managed to make a friend after all, much to Guren's shock. While unconscious from the battle, you dreamt of his family from the orphanage. Mika told him they were glad he made a friend because living for revenge was too painful. His family could finally stop worrying about him. As they walk away, Yu tells them not to go and he cries out Mika's name. He reaches his arm out and wakes up in a hospital bed, with Yaochai by his side. Shinoa informed them that the army had approved of both their actions, and they were now accepted into the Moon Demon Company. After recovering, Yu was ready to take the next step as a member of the Moon Demon Company. Guren, recognizing his growth, decided it was time to give him his own curse gear, a powerful weapon possessed by a demon. Yu, Yaochai, and another kid followed Guren to the ceremonial room where they would receive his curse gear. As they walked, Guren explained the importance of the contract ceremony. Each curse gear contained one of the strongest demons sealed within, and they would need to find a way to be accepted by this demon in order to draw out the weapon's true power. As the ceremony began, Yu reached out and drew forth a sword with a green blade. In a trance-like state, Yu finds himself walking through a realm filled with clouds. The atmosphere is serene, but something feels off. He hears his name being called and turns to see Mika. Confused and suspicious, Yu demands that the demon stop imitating his family. Mika comments that he thought touching on Yu's most vulnerable part would affect him, but he's surprised to see that Yu isn't shaken. Yu commands the demon to give up and grant him the power he seeks. Black smoke pours out of Mika, who collapses, and a formless black mass rises in his place. The demon reveals itself. The demon inquires why Yu desires power so intensely. Yu responds that it's for revenge and because he lost his family. The demon claims it can give him limitless power for revenge, but suddenly, another orphan's voice interrupts, saying that it isn't enough. Yu turns to see the lifeless bodies of his orphanage family lying on the ground. The children ask Yu if he's going to abandon them again and question whether it's fair that he's the only one who gets to make friends and live happily. But Yu asserts that he hasn't forgotten about them. He screams at the demon to stop and demands the power to protect everything that matters to him. The demon agrees to follow Yu as long as his heart remains strong, but warns that it will take over his body if it senses any weakness. The demon introduces itself as a Shiramaru and reveals that there's something inside Yu that is no longer human, likely due to experimentation. Shiramaru advises Yu not to trust humans, as they can be more terrifying than demons or vampires. Yu awakens from the trance, holding the demon's sword. As Yu observes his peers, he realizes that Kimazuki has successfully completed his trial, but Yoichi is still fighting with his demon. Suddenly, a loud blast erupts, and a cloud of dust fills the air. Durin explains that Yoichi has failed, and the demon is now possessing him. They see Yoichi, now transformed with sharp fingernails, pointed teeth, small horns, markings under his eyes, and slit pupils. Complaining about humans being a nuisance, he manifests a large green bow. Guren orders Yu and Kimazuki to kill him, but Yu disagrees, knocking the bow from Yoichi's hands. Guren reminds Yu that the demon is inside Yoichi, not the weapon. Meanwhile, Yoichi relives a painful memory of his sister telling him to stay hidden under the bed while she sacrifices herself to keep him alive. Tired of hiding, He declares that he wants the power to protect his friends and destroy his enemies. At that moment, he manages to conquer the demon and pass the trial. Overcome with emotion, Yoichi casts aside the bow and runs to Yu, hugging him tightly. Guren acknowledges Yoichi's talent, but notes that guilt has been sapping his will to live. He encourages Yoichi to let go of revenge and focus on living to protect his friends. Turning to Yu, Guren tells him to forget about his old family and embrace this new one, as reveals they will form a squad led by Shino. With all three boys having acquired their cursed gears and demonstrating teamwork, Guren decides to send them tomorrow to the front line to fight the vampires who are plotting to retake the city of Shinjuku. The next day, as the cargo truck nears the battlefield, the driver announces that they will arrive in just 15 minutes. The group braces themselves for the imminent fight. Shinoa, however, reveals that they are currently too weak to be of any real use on the front lines. In an effort to bolster their strength, she introduces them to a set of magic pills. Shinoa explains that these pills will enhance their synchronization with their demons, amplifying their abilities. Taking one pill increases a user's strength by 1.5 times, while 2 pills double it. However, she warns them that if they take 3 pills, their internal organs will rupture, causing severe harm or even death. Each pill lasts for 15 minutes, but leaves the user extremely vulnerable once its effects wear off. Yu questions Shinoa about whether this is the true way to harness the power of the cursed gear. Shinoa admits that mastering cursed gear requires dedicated training. Unfortunately, they are short on time, and this risky strategy is their best chance at making a difference in the upcoming battle. Upon arriving at their destination, the group finds Guren cornered and defenseless, facing a menacing vampire. Shinoa quickly orders her squad to take the pills to boost their strength, rescue Guren, and then retreat. The team follows her command, eager to save their leader. As they move closer, the situation takes a turn for the worse when Guren gets stabbed by the vampire. Enraged by the sight, Yu shouts at the vampire to get away from Guren. He charges toward the enemy, and with determination, he thrusts his cursed gear through the vampire's chest. The two lock eyes, and Yu's expression suddenly shifts from anger to shock. His eyes widen in disbelief. Yu is frozen with shock when he realizes he has just stabbed Mika, his long-lost childhood friend. Suddenly, Guren orders Yu to use the blade curse and kill Mika, but Yu can't bring himself to obey. Guren then tries to attack Mika himself, but Mika skillfully dodges the blow. Guren punches Yu for his disobedience, but Yu apologizes and explains his connection to Mika. Tears streaming down his face, Yu feels immense guilt for having abandoned Mika in the past. Meanwhile, Mika and Farid, a vampire, discuss what to do with Yu as more noble vampires arrive on the scene. Seeing the danger, Guren orders everyone to retreat, but Yu's escape is blocked by Farid. Farid taunts Yu, asking if he wants to play a game, which triggers Yu's painful memories of the vampire killing his family. In a fit of rage, Yu attacks Farid, but is unsuccessful in defeating him. As the situation becomes more dire, Mika offers to help Yu escape the vampires, urging him to leave everything behind. Confused, Yu questions why Mika is with Farid, the one who killed their family. Mika dismisses Yu's concerns and carries him in his arms, explaining that humans are exploiting Yu for their own purposes. Despite Mika's pleas, Yu refuses to abandon his friends. However, when Yu looks back at his friends, he sees Shinoa crying as she is bitten on the neck by a vampire. Yu's emotional pain triggers a transformation within him. His left eye turns red and blood runs down his face as he enters a trance-like state. In this trance, Yu encounters Asuramaru on a golden plane. He suspects she's trying to possess him, but she denies it, explaining that she's afraid of the monster inside him, which seems like a god bringing judgment to the world. In this mystical vision, Yu sees 7 massive trumpets and angels emerging from radiant beams of light. Asuramaru warns him that it's too late, and the non-human part of him is about to go wild. Back in reality, Yu starts transforming, with one eye turning completely black and a dripping, branch-like structure growing from his shoulder. Mika watches in horror as the transformation confirms his worst fears about humans. He tries to talk to Yu, but Yu only attacks him, destroying a gas station in the process. Crowley, a powerful vampire who has bitten Shinoa, approaches Yu. Yu swings his sword at Crowley with immense strength, destroying several buildings and leaving a massive crater in his wake. The destruction is immense, and onlookers can't help but be amazed and terrified at the sheer power Yu now wields. Crowley is initially unfazed by Yu's attacks, but quickly realizes the danger he is in. Yu, now consumed by rage, summons his cursed gear and uses it to engulf Crowley in a towering pillar of blackness. At the top of the building-sized column, A halo of light forms and then widens, descending down the structure. As the light reaches the bottom, it envelops the entire dark mass, causing it to shimmer and then explode with incredible force. After the battle, Yu notices Shinoa and moves toward her, consumed by a desire to annihilate all sinners. As he attacks her, Mika jumps in front, sacrificing himself to protect Yu from further heartache. Gurren shouts to Shinoa that she can still save Yu from his current state. Desperate, she leaps toward him and hugs him, begging him to return to normal. Yu finally snaps out of his transformed state, coughing up blood before collapsing to the ground. In a tearful embrace, Shinoa clings to Yu, while Mika curses the world of men. At the heart of a vast crater, Farid's cold fingers grip Gurren's neck, his laughter echoes, proclaiming the monster his secret weapon. Futile, Farid sneers, but Gurren's eyes gleam with triumph. A mere delay for the vampires was their goal. From a distance, Shinya Haraga's keen eye catches Farid's attention. His finger pulls the trigger of Byakamaru, a weapon not even a Gundam could match. 3 ethereal white tigers, wreathed in blue fire, leap forward to obey their master's command. "Don't hit Gurren," he commands, perhaps mistaking him for a Pokémon that needed catching. Farid's dance with death leaves him untouched but for a mere scratch. A warning well heeded, or the blow might have been fatal. Then, from the shadows, human warriors emerge. Kirito Haragi strides forward, his contempt for Gurren as cold as the tip of his sword. "You've done well, for a mere background character," he says, preparing to lead. His orders ring clear: seize the nobles, show the vampires the wrath of the Haragi, the humans, and the Japanese Imperial Demon Army. With a wave of his hand, the attack commences. Shinoa remembers the previous battle and Yuikairo's transformation as she walks underground. She approaches a restricted area guarded by soldiers. Shinoa reveals her identity as a member of the Japanese Imperial Demon Army's Vampire Extermination Unit. The soldiers mention it's a lab where they experiment on captured vampires. To gain access, Shinoa shows her family crest on a pocket watch, which allows her passage. She enters a laboratory filled with scientists examining vials of blood. Gurren is in an office overseeing them. Shinoa confronts Gurren, asking about Yu's transformation and the special drug he gave him. Gurren teases her emotions and avoids giving a clear answer. He questions how humans can survive in a world with horsemen and vampires, and he mentions Shinoa's sister's sacrifices for the cursed gear. Shinoa blushes when asked if she has a crush on Yu. Gurren orders her to leave and says the drug will wear off in 5 days, and Yu will wake up. Shinoa sits by Yu's hospital bed, worried and hoping he wakes up soon. She holds his hand but denies having a crush on him. In a flashback, Michaela is angry at humans during a battle. Farid tries to calm him, but Mika wants to save Yu. Farid thinks humans' desires are disgusting and can't rescue Yu now. Shinoa hugs Yu, and Mika gets angry. Farid asks if Mika hates humans, but Mika tells him to be quiet. Farid wonders what Mika will become, but they have to leave. Farid touches Mika's shoulder, and Mika yells at him to let go. Farid grabs Mika's neck, and Mika looks back at Yu. Currently, Mika is inside a transparent container, naked and with tears in his eyes. An electronic voice announces that the curse detoxification is done, and the container opens, releasing steam. Mika wakes up and wipes his tears, realizing he hasn't cried since he became a vampire. Mika, Lacus, and Renee get dressed. Lacus complains about their difficult situation because of a human. He asks Mika about his injury since he was hurt the worst. Mika ignores him, and Lacus wonders why Mika is ignoring him again. Renee asks about the monster they encountered. Lacus explains that the Progenitor Council is concerned about the humans studying a forbidden enchantment called Seraph of the End. The attack on Shinjuku was supposed to retrieve something related to it, but they don't know if they succeeded because Lord Farid was in command, and they can't predict his actions. Lacus suspects that Mika and the monster have a connection, and that might be why Mika is Queen Kroll's favorite. They want to know who Mika truly is, even if he doesn't answer. Mika stops ignoring Lacus and Renee, sadly admitting he's just an ugly vampire, which confuses Lacus. An announcement calls Mika to the royal audience chamber, where third progenitor Krull Teeps wants to see him. Lacus jokes that the queen is summoning her pet Mika, and Mika leaves. On another night, Yu wakes up in his hospital bed with his wounds healed. Yoichi, who was sleeping nearby, cheers that Yu is awake. Yu asks what happened, and Yoichi hugs him, saying he'll inform everyone. Yu quickly checks if everyone is okay, but Yoichi assures him that he was the only one seriously injured and in a coma for 7 days. After Yoichi leaves, Yu is relieved that everyone is okay. He wonders if Mika being alive was real or just a dream and becomes so happy that he starts crying. Shinoa comes in and jokingly calls him a crybaby, but she reassures him that it's okay to cry when he found out his family is still alive. She's glad he's awake and sits beside him. Yu asks Shinoa what happened and admits he can't remember. She playfully teases him, saying he claimed to feel sleepy and fell asleep in the middle of the battlefield. Shinoa then explains that Yu suddenly lost consciousness and their units were almost defeated. Fortunately, the main unit led by Kirito and Shinya Hiragi arrived in time to support them. They managed to kill many normal vampires but couldn't defeat the nobles. Some vampires were captured, but many escaped. Yu wants to know about Mika, whether he is a friend or foe. He's just happy as long as Mika is alive. Shinoa tells him that Mika was taken by the vampires, and he thanks her. She orders him not to leave the hospital and go after the vampires alone, and he agrees. In a flashback, after a battle, the squad retreats to a temporary base, leaving Shinoa alone on her knees. She thinks about Yu, Mika, and their family. Yu interrupts her thoughts, thanking her for worrying about him. Yu notices a bandage on Shinoa's neck and leans closer to see it. Shinoa blushes but explains that vampires drank her blood. Mitsuba enters the room and gets angry, thinking something else is happening between Yu and Shinoa. But it was just a misunderstanding. And Mitsuba has a bite on her neck too, which Yu asks about. The light turns on, and Kimazuki tells Mitsuba to be quiet in the hospital. Yoichi enters with him. Mitsuba yells at Kimazuki, but he ignores her and checks on Yu, who seems fine. Yu thanks him, but Kimazuki denies being worried. Shinoa teases Kimazuki for caring about Yu earlier, making him blush and deny it. Yoichi claims it's true. Yu apologizes for worrying everyone but is glad they are all alive. Shinoa squad agrees he still needs medical attention. Yoichi insists Yu was a good guy from the start. They decide to take a break until Yu fully recovers and promise not to rush to save Mika. Kimazuki leaves to get drinks, and Shinoa teases him about caring for his sister. Yoichi goes with him. Shinoa teases Mitsuba, but she points out that Shinoa isn't doing anything, claiming it's okay because she's the squad leader. In the royal audience chamber, Queen Krulteeps looks at Mika, who sits before her. Lacus and Rene sit on opposite ends of a bench in Sanguinum. Guren Ikano's squad eats in a cafeteria without Guren present, surrounded by soldiers. Crowley Usford sits in a chair, drinking blood from a wine glass. Chess Bell and Horn Skulled play chess on the floor. Shinya Hiragi reads a book by a lamplight. Kirito Hiragi looks through a window in his office at the ruined Shinjuku. Papers for the Seraph of the End project with an analysis report lie on a desk next to a sword. Shinoa and Mitsuba leave Yu's room. Yu stands up, closes a window, and wonders how none of his friends died, and Mika is still alive. He thinks about Mika and feels like he can do anything as long as Mika is alive. Meanwhile, Mika gazes at the moon from underground in Sanguinum, thinking about Yu. Yu and Mika both promise themselves to rescue each other. Guren signs a report in English about the battle. He stops the record player and closes it. On the surface, Farid Bathory is amused that his and his partner's plans are going smoothly. He notes that humans' desires are getting out of control, and vampires are acting arrogantly. He hands over research data to his partner. His partner seems serious, and as Farid tries to say something, the rooftop door closes, and his partner leaves. Shinoa and Guren have a practice fight in an abandoned area. Guren teases Shinoa about not being able to kill him despite him killing her older sister, Maharu. Shinoa asks Guren about using Yu and if it's related to Maharu. Guren reveals that Maharu is within him, but he's not possessed by her. He avoids giving further answers and leaves Shinoa frustrated. Later, Shinoa finds Yu in the library. He's tired and looking at books. Shinoa tells him to rest, but he insists he's fine. She playfully teases him about looking at inappropriate stuff. They discuss turning humans into vampires, and Shinoa asks if Yu wants to turn Mika back into a human. Yu says he's just happy Mika is alive and revenge isn't his focus now. Shinoa admits she doesn't know how to turn vampires back into humans and notes that Yu has matured. A voice over the intercom calls Yu to the first office, and Shinoa warns him about the powerful Hiragi family. She boasts about her high rank within the family. Outside the library, Yu meets Guren, who tells him a story and claims ownership over him. Guren warns Yu not to be too friendly with the Hiragi family. Yu ignores him and heads to the first office, with Guren following and asserting his authority. Mitsuba joins Yu in an elevator and talks about her promotion, feeling unworthy because of her family background. Yu comforts her and thanks her for believing in him. He goes up to meet the Hiragas, while Mitsuba meets Shinoa and tells her about her promotion as well. As Yu enters a dark room, a spotlight reveals a vampire attacking him. He defeats the vampire with one swing of his sword. Kirito, Shinya, and AI are in the room with him. Kirito tests Yu's swordsmanship and activates his curse unexpectedly. Yu tries to attack from behind, but AI blocks him. Then Shinya tests Yu's combat skills with long-range attacks, and Shinya wins. He explains that Yu wasn't properly trained for such combat. Shinya reveals that both he and Yu are suspected of being vampire spies. Yu denies being a spy, but Kirito orders him to go to another room, and AI leads him there. In another room, Yu's friends Yoichi and Shiho are tied to chairs behind a window. Kirito threatens them to get the truth from Yu. Kirito questions Yu about his past and accuses him of being an experiment for the Hyakuya sect. Yu's friends are tortured while Kirito demands answers. Yu remembers his childhood and the questions he doesn't have answers to. Kirito wants Yu to work for him, but Yu demands his friend's release first. After some tough moments, Kirito dismisses Yu, and Shinya gives his opinion. Outside, Shinoa, Mitsuba, and Yu's friends wait for him. Yu demands an explanation from Guren, who admits he saved Yu because he has value. Yu asks if Guren can also save Mika, and Guren says they are all family, and they will work together to save him. Guren promises to teach Yu how to properly use his cursed gear. In Sanguinum, Mika is in pain and meets Farid. Farid suggests that Mika should drink a child's blood to stop aging. Mika reminds Farid of the city rules and tells him to let the child go. Farid invites Mika to a progenitor council meeting, and then he leaves Mika suffering on the street. At night, Yu, Shinoa, Kimazuki, and Mitsuba train their demon weapon affinity outside among abandoned buildings. Yu asks his demon Asurumaru to possess him, but only at a low level, as higher levels require blood. Yoichi, perched atop a lamppost, remains alert for danger. He detects 5 horsemen of John approaching and swiftly defeats them using his Gekuin powers. He explains that talking to his demon in his sleep enhances his abilities. As Yu trains, he instructs his sword to drink his blood, leading to a demon possession. He faints while the team stands guard. While Yu is unconscious, Kimazuki questions Shinoa about the Hiragi family's interrogation. Shinoa admits to manipulating Yu for his sister's safety. Kimazuki agrees to follow orders, even if he disagrees, but Yoichi wants honesty and promises to share what she knows with Yu later. In Yu's mind, he relives his past where his parents call him a monster and try to harm him. He sees the lifeless bodies of his orphanage family outside the apartment, and his father stabs him, calling him a coward. In Yu's mind, Asurumaru tries to break him with a painful memory of his past, but Yu remains determined to keep his promise and overcomes the illusion. He faces an apparition of young Mika and reaches out to him, signifying his determination to save and be with Mika again. Yu awakens in the real world, feeling empowered by the support of his team. In Sanguinum, Farid attends a meeting with Krull and members of the Progenitor Council. They discuss the incident during the Battle of Shinjuku and the humans' attempt to weaponize the Seraph of the End. Farid summons Mika and presents a recording of Yu's transformation. Some council members express shock, and Farid suggests that Leskar, a third progenitor from Europe, could become the next ruler of Japan over Krull. Krull plans to send her strongest units to confront the Japanese Imperial Demon Army gathering in the north. The meeting ends with a council member inquiring about the young boy standing behind Farid. After the meeting, Krull is furious at Farid for bringing Mika to the Progenitor Council, but Farid threatens to expose her secrets if he is harmed. They reluctantly agree to be allies. The team continues their training, and Kimazuki faces a tougher possession. His demon, Kaisuke-O, taunts him and shows him a painful memory of leaving his ailing sister, Mirai, behind due to lack of food. In the memory, one of the boys offers Kimazuki a knife, suggesting he should let Mirai die. Shocked and horrified, Kimazuki locks himself in his apartment to guard her. In the illusion, Mirai asks him to kill her, tempting him with the idea of freedom from his responsibilities. The demon, taking on Mirai's appearance, hears Kimazuki's inner thoughts of feeling burdened by taking care of her. Kimazuki realizes that he also had thoughts of being free from his sister's illness and struggles with guilt. Mirai rises from the bed in the illusion and thanks him for finally ending her misery, causing Kimazuki great distress. Kimazuki reflects on Yu's selfless nature and how he would risk his life to protect those he cares about, even if they are not blood-related family. He feels that Yu's qualities make him a better person than himself. In the illusion, Kimazuki surprises the demon by turning the knife on himself instead of his sister, completing the trial with his inner strength. After waking up, Kimazuki challenges Yu with his enhanced demon power, and they both display their upgraded abilities. Kimazuki summons a levitating coffin that counts down to 0, adding to the intensity of the training. Yu uses his strengthened demon power to create an arc of floating katana swords, surprising Kimazuki. He deflects the airborne swords propelled at him, some of which explode on contact with surrounding objects. Shinoa notes that all 3 black weapon holders have shown exceptional abilities beyond their training levels. She wonders where Gurren found them and suspects that Gurren might be hiding their details from higher-ranking officers and that human experimentation may have occurred. Later, Shinoa and Mitsuba view their files and history, both of which have been deleted. They are concerned about the possibility of hidden secrets within the army and feel unprepared for what might happen next. They fear something bad is about to occur. The child who talked to Farid Bathory earlier is seen wandering around Sanguinum, the vampire city. He sends a message on a carrier pigeon to Ai Sangu in the ruined city, and Kirito Haragi reads the note and orders Gurren to be brought to him. Meanwhile, Yu, Kimizuki, and Yoichi meet with Shinoa and Mitsuba for breakfast. They hear a commotion in the kitchen and find Shinoa and Mitsuba arguing over a flaming pan. Kimizuki shows off his cooking skills by making omelets. Shinoa reveals 2 important things to discuss. First, you might have been part of human experimentation and lost control during battle, trying to harm Shinoa. Second, Shinoa is uncertain if Gurren is truly on their side. Yu defends Gurren, but Shinoa thinks he might have been using them all along, especially Yu. Mitsuba thinks Gurren might see them as tools to impress his superiors, but there might be something bigger going on. Kimizuki and Yu are surprised by this new information. Shinoa believes they need to decide whether to trust Gurren or not, considering the possibility that he's manipulating them. They might be seen as traitors if they follow Gurren and he is using them as weapons, even if they are just following orders. Gurren responds to Kirito's summons and meets him on the roof of a building in Shinjuku. There, he finds 3 vampires chained to a black scythe. Kirito confirms that it's a cursed gear experiment to turn vampires into demons and use their powers. Gurren is disgusted by the treatment of the starving vampires. Kirito questions how Gurren managed to find 3 black demon prospects. Gurren denies any involvement in human experimentation, but Kirito doesn't believe him. Gurren leaves, but Kirito suspects he might be planning a coup. Gurren challenges Kirito, saying he could defeat him if he wanted to. Kirito trusts Gurren because of his emotions, like love, friendship, and honor, which he thinks make it unlikely for him to betray him. Kirito reveals his grand goal of recovering the world from the vampire's rule. He wants to destroy every last vampire in Japan and crush human organizations to control the world under the demon army. He plans to start by exterminating the 25 vampire nobles in Japan, and he needs Gurren's team to go to Nagoya, where 10 of them are located. Kirito also knows that the vampires will attack Tokyo in a month. Gurren is ordered to carry out the mission, but he suspects that Kirito is hiding something more in his plan. Kirito wants a world where vampires serve humans as livestock to shift the balance of power in favor of humans. After Kirito leaves, Gurren is visited by a vision of Maharu, who warns him not to be deceived by Kirito's orders. She tells Gurren that he should follow her orders instead because she is the only one who can grant his unspecified wish. Gurren dismisses her and she disappears into his sword. Meanwhile, Yu is standing on a rooftop, lost in thought. Shinoa joins him and playfully suggests that he must be looking at a girl undressing. Yu asks Shinoa about the incident where he almost killed her, and she tells him not to worry about it. They both consider the possibility that Gurren planned for Yu to lose control during the battle. Yu asks Shinoa to promise that she will be by his side, as she was the one who brought him back to normal after the transformation. Yu decides that he will stick with Gurren, whom he considers family since the beginning. He sees the rest of his squad as his new brothers and sisters, and he cannot exclude Mika from his family. Yu believes that you shouldn't turn your back on family, regardless of whether they are related by blood or not. Kimizuki agrees with Yu's decision, and Shinoa's squad agrees to stick with Gurren's plans. Mika, who is starving for blood, goes to the throne room of Sanguinum, where Krull is preparing her blood. He forcefully drinks from her neck but quickly apologizes. Mika asks for extra serum to drink when Krull is not around, but she warns him that the effects won't last forever, and eventually, he will need to drink from a human. Mika questions why Krull didn't kill him, and Yu is ordered by the Progenitor Council. Krull sees Mika as her pet and easily forces him into submission. She reveals her plan to use the Seraph of the End for herself in a final battle against humans. To save Yu, Mika must go undercover from both human and vampire sides, and if he fails, he will be considered a traitor by both and the world will turn against him. Shinoa informs Gurren that both Yu and Kimizuki have completed their demon possession training. Gurren shares a new mission with her, which involves killing vampires in Nagoya. On the vampires' side, Renee and Lacus are preparing warplanes for battle, and Mika also receives orders to join the fight. In a laboratory, Kirito and Ai oversee scientists conducting tests on Mirai, pushing her to dangerous levels despite the risk to her life. Kimazuki is driving Shinoa's squad through the ruined city on their way to Nagoya. Yu wonders if Mika will be there. Suddenly, they are intercepted by the 4 horsemen of John. They try to avoid them, but more enemies appear. Mitsuba and Yoichi fight back using their cursed gear. Yu also uses Shinoa tricks Kimazuki into leaving Yu behind by swerving the car. The team drives off without Yu, jokingly waving their goodbyes, letting the rest stop. Goshi finds a magazine with bikini models and jokes about the girls in their team not wearing bikinis. Sayuri offers to wear one if Guren wants her to, making her blush. Goshi then informs Guren that Mito is checking for vampires and confirms that there are none. Ignoring the playful talk, Guren addresses the Moon Demon Company members. He notices Shinya arriving in a red sports car, which he commandeered. Shinya joins them after learning about the mission where 100 soldiers will face vampire nobles and are expected to be sacrificed. Meanwhile, Shinoa's squad arrives late for the meeting because they left Yu behind as a joke. Kimazuki playfully blames Shinoa and Mitsuba for the delay. Guren continues the briefing, and when he spots Shinoa sneaking in, he scolds her for not following the army's rules and emphasizes the seriousness of the situation. Yu takes the blame for the lateness, saying he fought the 4 horsemen of John. Guren orders them to line up, and Yu will be punished later. Guren explains that the next mission will be the most dangerous one yet. After Yu arrives at the ruined rest stop, he faces punishment for being late to the meeting. Guren is impressed with Yu taking the blame for his comrades, even though it wasn't his fault. Guren calls on Goshi to create an illusion of Yu in danger, but Shinoa sees through it and dispels the enchantment. Guren reveals that one mistake can lead to the death of a comrade. Shinoa insists she understands the seriousness of her actions, but Guren disagrees. He arranges Mito and Shinya to fight, and Shinoa orders them to keep their distance. Yu defends Shinoa, saying she is trying hard. Despite the tension, the squad prepares for their dangerous mission. At this point, a heat against them, and the team tries to counter them. Yoichi faces off against Major General Shinya. Shinoa and Mitsuba fight. The situation becomes chaotic as everyone engages in combat. Guren creates a powerful vortex that blows a hole in the building, scattering the fighters. Yu fights, disarming Shinoa, and stopping Kimazuki and Yoichi from intervening. The situation becomes dire for the squad as Guren gains the upper hand. After the intense battle with Guren, the smoke clears, and everyone except Shinoa is down. Guren scolds Shinoa for not performing well against the Black Demon holders and worries about their ability to face stronger vampire nobles in the upcoming battle. Guren encourages Yu, saying he can become stronger with squad with Narumi's squad for the upcoming mission. In another scene, Mika is in a ruined neighborhood where he comes across children running from vampires. He witnesses Lacus feeding on a girl's blood and longingly contemplates the blood himself for the vampire nobles in Nagoya. Mika tells Lacus that he is not interested in human blood and sustains himself on vials of Kroll's blood. However, he is aware that Kroll's blood may not be able to sustain him forever. He almost gives in to his urges when he pills himself when Lacus intervenes, and they leave on the aircraft. Guren gives a motivational speech to a large group of vampire extermination units, including the Moon Demon Company. He tells them that they must succeed in their mission and return with victory. Upon arriving in Nagoya, both Shinoa's squad and Narumi's squad prepare to ambush the 15th progenitor, Lukal Wesker. They are part of a larger plan to simultaneously eliminate 8 vampire nobles through concentrated attacks. Some members express doubts about relying on Shinoa's squad in this high-stakes mission, but Yu assures them that he is serious and determined to protect everyone. Shinoa confirms that they won't hold anyone back, and Yaoi provides information about the target's arrival time. Yoichi, a long-range fighter, is supported by Shinya as they observe the vampires from a radio tower, preparing for the battle. Yoichi uses his cursed gear to spy on the vampires below, and Shinya spots the noble they are targeting. The noble, Lukal Wesker, is seen enjoying a glass of blood from a young girl. He discusses Kroll's orders to destroy the Japanese Imperial Demon Army with his servant Esther Lee. They consider whether they should follow these orders since they are part of a rivaling faction under 3rd Progenitor Leskar. Suddenly, Lukal attacks Esther without warning and deflects the sniper attacks from Shinya and Yoichi. The combined sniper fire signals the start of the assault, and both teams take a curse enhancement supplement. Lukal easily repels Yu, Kimazuki, and Shinoa's attacks and grabs Shinoa's scythe, swinging her and Narumi's weapon together. Yu steps in to protect Shinoa, and Mitsuba summons a demon to defend Yu. Kimazuki briefly fights Lukal but gets disarmed, and before Lukal can strike him down, he is attacked by Taro, Rika, and Yaoi. Shusaku uses his cursed gear to bind Lukal's left arm with a spectral red chain, giving the others a chance to regroup. Yu and Narumi continue their coordinated attack on Lukal, but he quickly cuts off his own arm that was bound by Shusaku's chain and jumps away. The squad maintains their formation, preventing Lukal from joining other nobles in the city. Lukal realizes that these are the humans Krull mentioned and acknowledges their strength. Kimizuki comes up with a plan to lure Lukal into their formation by taunting him and poking his severed arm. Lukal gets angry and attacks Kimizuki but is stopped by the rest of the squad, including Shinya and Yoichi. Lukal manages to endure their attacks but is eventually defeated by a strike from Yu. Despite his injuries, Lukal refuses to be defeated by humans. He takes Yaoi's sword and uses it to stab himself, choosing to end his life on his own terms rather than be defeated by humans. His body disintegrates in front of Narumi. After successfully defeating the vampire noble Lukal, Team Shinoa and Team Narumi praise each other for their tactics in winning the challenging battle. They feel confident that they can defeat other vampire nobles as well. Meanwhile, Guren's squad is facing another vampire noble named Mel Stefano. Guren manages to defeat him, but the fight was tough and exhausting. During this time, Ida Kusunoki, a member of Guren's squad, appears severely wounded and reports that their mission to rescue hostages failed, and many soldiers were killed. The remaining soldiers have been taken hostage to lure Guren into a trap. Despite the bad news, Guren remains determined and decides to join forces with Narumi and Haraga's squads to launch a combined attack on the 13th progenitor, Crowley Usford. Crowley Usford has taken hostages and is waiting for the trap to be successful, as he resides in a government building humming to himself while reading documents. The situation is tense, and the fate of the hostages and the success of the mission remain uncertain. Inside Nagoya City Hall, Crowley, a vampire noble, is reading documents about unspecified experiments while playing chess with Horned Skull. Chess Bell, another vampire, is drinking blood from one of the hostages. Although Horn claims she can't kill a hostage and Chess says he can't die without her permission, the hostage dies from blood loss. Crowley takes the deceased hostage's sword and tests its power on Chess, sending her crashing into the wall. He notices that humans are gaining strength too fast from their cursed gear weapons. Crowley's wound from the sword doesn't heal, making him suspect a possible traitor leaking information to humans, maybe even a high-ranking one. He considers the involvement of humans like Krull Teeps and Farid Bathory in these advancements. After successfully defeating the vampire noble Lukal Wesker, Team Shinoa, Team Narumi, and Shinya wait for other squads to arrive at 2:20 p.m. Eiko Ehara returns with only 7 survivors out of 15 members, and Yu is glad they are back unharmed. Mitsuba acknowledges the reality that comrades can fall in battle. After successfully defeating the vampire noble Mel Stefano, Guren and his squad take an underground route to regroup. Guren asks Narumi about the new squad members, and he praises Shinoa's squad efforts upon seeing Yu's face. Despite losing over half of their team, Guren is relieved that Eiko's squad made it back alive. However, many other squads have not returned, and instead of waiting for them, Guren decides to proceed with the next phase of the mission. 9 squads that were supposed to eliminate 3 vampire nobles in Nagoya City Hall were either killed or captured. Guren now aims to complete the mission of assassinating the noble vampires and rescuing the captives. He dismisses Eiko as a volunteer in her emotional state and plans to meet up with her at the airport after the rescue. Eiko's squad is left behind to relay this message to other returning squads. At 2:40 p.m., Eiko checks her watch and hopes for the safety of the elite squads. Another squad returns successfully after destroying their targets, but Eiko's happiness is short-lived when vampire war helicopters arrive. She tells her squad to run for the airport and prepares her cursed gear bow. Eiko manages to destroy one of the helicopters with a powerful projectile. However, Lacus Welt and Rene Sim jump from another helicopter and surround the humans with vampires. Mika appears behind Eiko, grabs her by the neck, and pins her to the ground. He wants to ask her a question. Eiko realizes they are all outmatched by the vampires and makes a difficult decision. She gives a final order to the humans, initiating code 284, and those who comply bite the poison pill and die instantly. As Eiko goes to bite the pill, Mika stops her, saving her from being tortured for information by the vampires. In this situation, Mika has a question for Eiko while they are away from the other vampires. He covers her mouth and tells her to pretend to be dead so they won't find out she's alive. Mika asks if she knows a human named Yuichiro Hayakuya, and from her reaction, He deduces that she does. He warns her to tell him everything if she wants to live. Eiko angers Mika by calling Yu her comrade, and he demands to know what Yu is to her. Lacus notices them, but Mika pretends that Eiko has already killed herself to deceive the other vampires. Eiko learns that the vampires are heading to the city hall, where Lord Crowley is, and where Gurin and his team are heading to. She holds a knife to Mika's throat to prevent them from moving and threatens to kill him if they try anything. The vampires want to capture her for information, and Mika is blamed if he dies. Eiko warns them not to go to the city hall because they will all be wiped out. Mika is surprised and asks why she would trust him, to which she mentions him calling Yu by a nickname. Eiko tries to attack Mika, but he disarms her and keeps her at bay while they act as if nothing is happening under Lacus and Rene's watchful eyes. Eiko kicks Mika and seeks guarantees that she won't be killed if she reveals where the humans who attacked are heading. She misleads them by saying that the second troop of the Japanese Imperial Demon Army plans to attack the Botanical Garden in Higashiyama Park to kill the 17th progenitor, Zane Lindau. The vampires decide to head to the Botanical Garden to act on this information, fearing trouble if they knew and did nothing about it. After Mika leaves Eiko, she feels hopeless and asks him to kill her. Mika refuses and tells her to do it herself, but she can't because it might make Lacus and Rene doubt her information. Mika decides to catch up with the others, but Rene orders him to bring Eiko along as she can provide more information. Eiko reluctantly agrees to go with them. However, she realizes that they will eventually kill her and decides to take matters into her own hands. She fires a shot at Mika but misses, and he responds by killing her with his sword. Mika lies to Lacus, saying that Eiko's information doesn't matter and they should focus on protecting the 17th progenitor. He pretends to doubt the information and decides to go to the city hall alone, taking 5 soldiers with him as a cover. As they leave in a helicopter, Mika reflects on Eiko, wondering if she protected Yu or if she was just using him. He tells the vampires with him to follow him to investigate the city hall, determined to find Yu. Meanwhile, Yu, Shinoa, and Gurin observe the hostages tied to wooden crosses in the distance from the top of a building. They prepare to launch their attack on the vampires in the city hall. Rene and Lacus head to the Botanical Gardens to protect the 17th progenitor, Zane Lindau, based on false information given by Eiko. Meanwhile, Mika takes 5 soldiers and heads to the city hall where Yu is going. He is determined to find and confront Yu. On the other side, Shinoa, Yu, and their squad, along with Narumi's squad and the Moon Demon Company, prepare to attack the vampire nobles who have taken over Nagoya City Hall. There are 26 hostages tied to crosses outside, and they know it's a trap, but Yu is determined to save them. Gurin tests the vampires' reaction by sniping at them from a distance. The targets for the attack are the 13th progenitor, Crowley Usford, and the 17th progenitors, Chess Bell and Horn Skuld. Their priority is to maintain their head count and then save the hostages. If the enemy proves too strong, they will give up on rescuing the hostages. The goal is to stall the vampires in Nagoya and buy time for the main army unit of the Japanese Imperial Demon Army to prepare to go to Shinjuku. The recent missions were actually decoys for a bigger plan. Despite the tough situation, Shinya is determined to do their best in this mission. He and Yoichi, both skilled marksmen, prepare to snipe from a distance. Narumi and Shinoa lead their teams into attack formation. Shinya and Yoichi are positioned to snipe at the city hall. Yoichi spots the vampire noble Crowley on the 5th floor. Yoichi asks for permission to shoot, and Gurin allows it. Yoichi fires a powerful attack, but Crowley avoids it with ease, showing how strong he is. Yu and the others realize that Crowley is one of the vampires who defeated them before and drank their blood. They understand that attacking Crowley head-on would be futile, so Shinya suggests 2 options. Either shoot the hostages and run or split the enemies up, save the hostages, and retreat. Yu firmly rejects the idea of harming the hostages, and Shinoa asks Gurin for his decision. Narumi suggests killing the hostages and retreating, but Yu gets angry and argues against it. Narumi explains that he has friends among the hostages and is just as concerned for their safety. Shinoa points out that the mission is a decoy to distract the vampires from the main army unit. Gurin finalizes the plan. They will attack aggressively to make the vampires believe they are the main unit. But if they can't win, they will retreat and move to another location. After their failed attack, Crowley and his comrades decide to wait for their enemies to make another move. Crowley suspects that the humans have plans to defeat the vampire nobles and believes there may be another agenda at play, possibly involving Farid seeking information. Crowley plans to capture the commander of the human forces to gather intelligence. Meanwhile, Guren's squad and Shinya plan to attack Crowley head-on while Narumi and Shinoa's squad rescue the hostages. Guren has a practical plan to fight and retreat to prioritize rescuing the hostages and ensuring their survival. They set a 5-minute time limit to rescue the hostages and retreat to the Nagoya airport. As they wait for the right moment to attack, the teams set their alarms to retreat at a specific time. Shinoa emphasizes that everyone must retreat without question, even if it means leaving someone behind. Hugh and the others agree with the plan and acknowledge the importance of teamwork and saving their friends, even in difficult situations. The mission begins with a bright flash and explosion, signaling the squad to attack the city hall. Guren leads the assault, taking down vampires with his sword, while Mito and Sayuri use their curse gear to defeat vampires effortlessly. Goshi uses his illusion spell to create the appearance of more soldiers attacking the city hall, distracting the vampires and allowing the squad to move forward. Narumi successfully frees some hostages and instructs his team to do the same. Guren engages with Crowley, a powerful vampire noble, but is overpowered and sent crashing into the city hall building. Shinya tries to help but is also thrown into the building. Goshi stops Mito from interfering, as it would only make things worse. Narumi's team continues to rescue hostages, and Shinoa's squad decides to help Guren and Shinya for a limited time before retreating. They have 3 minutes left to act. After recovering from their encounter with Crowley, Guren and Shinya realize that Crowley is much stronger than other vampire nobles. However, they continue with their plan to draw the attention of all 3 nobles. Crowley arrives, along with Skull and Chess, interrupting their escape plan. Meanwhile, Shinoa's squad is running to the 4th floor, but Shinoa has a secret plan and asks them to follow her without explaining further. Guren engages in combat with Crowley, but the noble easily parries his attacks. Shinya's attempts to interfere with his rifle fire are also thwarted by Chess and Horn. Guren activates his curse gear, Maharu, and Shinya tries to shoot systematically, but Crowley is able to repel his attacks. Guren creates a diversion to escape with Shinya, but Crowley quickly catches up to them. They try to run again, but Crowley appears in front of them by smashing through a wall. Guren sacrifices himself to protect Shinya and gets injured by Crowley's sword. However, Crowley decides not to kill Guren yet, as he has questions for him. Guren tells Shinya to retreat and take command of the mission. At that moment, Yu appears from below and attacks Crowley, but the noble easily blocks his attack and counters with his sword. Guren is in a dangerous situation, held by Crowley, while Yu launches a surprise attack from below. However, Crowley calmly counters Yu's attack and blocks Kimazuki's counter-strike. He easily evades Yoichi's arrows and withstands Mitsuba's demon energy attack. Holding Guren as a human shield, Crowley moves him in front of Yu to prevent him from attacking. Yu changes tactics, using his sword to emit a red flame-like substance and creating multiple swords with his Asura Cannon ability. Despite the strong attack, Crowley's comrades, Chess and Horn, join the fight and deflect all of Yu's strikes. Yu then targets Chess, but her sword's power causes him to break the ground upon impact. Horn uses her whip to lift Yu into the air, but Shinoa intervenes with her scythe to protect him, resulting in both of them being thrown back. Realizing that they are hopelessly outmatched by the vampire nobles, the squad regroups and uses Yoichi's covering fire to buy time for their escape. Kimazuki stops Yu from going back for Guren, who instructs them to follow the orders and retreat immediately. Crowley throws Guren into a wall to silence him and recognizes Yu as the one who lost control in Shinjuku. He decides not to kill them, as Yu might be of interest to Farid. Yu wants to fight again, but Shinya stops him and orders everyone to leave Guren behind. Shinya notices an enemy helicopter approaching, likely bringing reinforcements for the vampires. In reality, the enemy's backup forces were diverted to the botanical gardens by Eiko, and Mika arrives in a helicopter to find and rescue Yu. Shinoa shows the stopwatch, indicating the retreat time of 1510. The vampire nobles decide to capture them instead of letting them escape. Guren silently communicates something to Shinya, who takes charge and drags Yu away despite his protests. Chess and Horn try to stop them, but suddenly, a powerful illusion creates a fiery cave with molten lava, blocking the vampire's path. Crowley is surprised by the strength of this illusion and wonders who is giving humans such powerful abilities. Even while pondering, Crowley remains focused and deflects attacks from the squad members. He spots Sayuri trying to rescue Guren and attacks, but Goshi defends her using his curse gear. Mito attempts an ambush, but Crowley overpowers her as well. Guren insists that the squad retreats and calls Crowley a monster. Goshi creates more magma to cover their escape, and Crowley destroys the illusion but remains alone with Guren. He orders Chess and Horn to tie up Guren until Farid arrives. In another location, Lieutenant General Kirito is informed that their test subject will be ready for transport, but he demands it to be ready earlier. He is determined to stop the vampire nobles from entering Kanto and wiping out the human race. Seishiro arrives on his father's orders and confronts Kirito for going against their father's plans. Kirito is confident in his actions and orders Seishiro's arrest, but AI, one of Kirito's followers, kills the men sent to arrest him. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city hall, Shinya is dragging Yu away from the battle, and Yu is upset about leaving Guren behind. Shinoa reminds him of their promise to retreat at a certain time, but Yu is determined to continue the mission to protect their family and friends. Shinya decides to join Narumi's squad to free the hostages tied to crosses. Yu wonders if they should prioritize the mission over their friends and family, but he realizes that in a world like this, their family is everything to them. This decision resonates with Sayuri and reminds Yu of his younger days. When Guren hears Yu screaming in the night, he goes to comfort him. Yu tells Guren about his recurring dream of vampires killing his family. Guren reassures him that it was just a bad dream and stays with him until he falls asleep. Yu opens up about his past, how he lost his family and the other children from the orphanage, and questions the purpose of his life. Guren shares a similar experience from his past, where he couldn't save someone important to him. He tells Yu to keep living and fighting against vampires until the day comes when he can find a reason to live for. Back in the present, Yu decides to take more cursed gear supplements to gain more power. However, he takes too many pills, and blood starts gushing out from his nose and eyes. Despite their efforts to stop him, Yu collapses, and Shinoa fears that he might be dead. Meanwhile, Mika arrives in a helicopter looking for Yu. He easily takes down the other vampires who were with him. Outside the city hall, the Moon Demon army is preparing to transport something important. Kirito orders an increase in the dosage of a test subject, even if it risks their life, as it must be ready on time. He also inquires about Guren's reports from Nagoya. Yu is in immense pain and grips his chest as Asuromaru, the demon inside his cursed gear, speaks to him. Asuromaru explains that Yu now desires power to save Guren instead of seeking revenge. Asuromaru is willing to give Yu as much power as he wants, but he warns him that taking the cursed gear supplements was a mistake. These pills intensify the curse and can lead to death, which has already happened to Yu. Despite his death, Yu is still conscious and wonders if he is in the afterlife. Asuromaru reveals that he is not dead but being kept alive by angels. Yu notices a golden trumpet-like instrument in the landscape and is drawn towards it. Asuromaru tries to dissuade him, warning that angels are worse than demons, but Yu is fixated on the trumpet. Asuromaru repairs Yu's damaged body as his heart starts beating again. However, Yu remains focused on the trumpet and ignores Asuromaru's offer to heal him completely. Asuromaru tries to find a way to return Yu to his normal self and takes hold of Yu's hand to stop him from reaching the trumpet. Instead, Yu demands Asuromaru's power, and Asuromaru grants it to him. The effects of the cursed gear supplements remain, allowing Yu to wield Asuromaru's power for a short time without becoming a demon. Asuromaru tells Yu to wake up from his unconscious state. After awakening and receiving Asuromaru's power along with the effects of 3 cursed gear supplements, Yu rushes back to Nagoya City Hall where Guren is held captive by Crowley. He moves at incredible speed, but his perceptions are blurred due to the overwhelming power he is wielding. Inside the city hall, Guren is being interrogated by Chess about how humans acquired their powers. Yu suddenly crashes through the window and attacks Chess, but Crowley steps in to defend her. Crowley is amazed by Yu's power and wonders if he is truly human. Yu activates his Asura Cannon power, and Crowley enhances his strength using his own abilities and his sword, which drinks his blood. They clash, and Crowley quickly gains the upper hand, knocking Yu around the room. Despite the beating, Yu doesn't back down and continues to fight. However, before Crowley can deliver a decisive blow, Guren steps between them to protect Yu. Knowing they need Guren alive, Crowley hesitates, and Guren urges Yu to leave and escape. Yu, fueled by his desire to save Guren and protect his family and comrades, continues to fight against Crowley. However, Crowley taunts him, belittling him as nothing more than livestock. Yu's anger and frustration grow, causing red demon markings to spread across his face. Despite Guren's warnings not to use too much power, Yu calls upon Asuromaru for more strength. As Yu's desire for power intensifies, he begins to lose control, and his left eye is marked with a purple tinge. Asuromaru, now outside of Yu's mind, encourages him to embrace his desire, and become a demon. The curse takes a toll on Yu, and he starts transforming into a partial demon with a black horn on the left side of his head. Despite the danger, Yu is determined to save Gurren. He now faces Crowley as a partial demon, possessing demon-like fangs and a piercing red eye. The battle continues, with Yu showing newfound power and determination. During the intense battle between Yu as a partial demon and Crowley, an unearthly levitating coffin arrives on the scene. Gurren recognizes it and orders Kimazuki to open it on the count of 9. Inside the coffin are shining purple eyes, and it begins a countdown. Kimazuki manages to rescue Yu and throws him into the coffin just as it completes the countdown. The coffin then seals Yu inside and disappears with Kimazuki. They escape through a hole in the floor created by magic, and Crowley and the other vampires are left confused. The squad manages to regroup and open the coffin, finding a sleeping Yu, now back to his normal state without the demon horn. They continue to make their way to the rendezvous point, where Narumi is waiting. Meanwhile, Mika stands alone on a ruined freeway, noticing snow falling. In one of the helicopters, Krull sits on a gilded throne with her elite vampire entourage. She realizes that Ferret is observing her with a mischievous smile. Nika sees helicopters approaching and realizes that they belong to the Kyoto group, not Lacus Welt's group. He knows he must act quickly before they arrive. He sees the survivors of the vampire eradication missions running towards the airport, including Yu being carried on Kimazuki's back. Mika decides that he needs to get Yu back from the humans. He recalls a moment from their past when they were in the orphanage together, dreaming of escaping to a world without vampires. Mika's desire to make Yu happy led to a plan that ended in tragedy, but now he is determined to rescue Yu. Mika faces the oncoming soldiers and prepares to fight with all his strength to retrieve his most important family member, Yu. Mika unleashes a powerful attack from his sword towards the soldiers coming towards him. Narumi uses his shield to block the attack, but Mika quickly evades the rest of the soldiers and makes his way through the army to reach Yu. However, he is stopped by a purple mist created by Goshi's cursed gear, which tries to confuse his mind. Mika fights through the illusion and continues forward, knocking away anyone who stands in his way. As he gets closer to Yu, the soldiers try to attack him, but Mika remains focused on his objective and pushes through their attacks. Shinoa recognizes Mika and tries to talk to him, but he believes that the humans have harmed Yu and won't listen to her. He reaches out to grab Yu, but Kimazuki stops him and refuses to give Yu back to him. In response, Mika forcefully knocks Kimazuki down and continues his attempt to retrieve Yu. Mika successfully retrieves Yu from the midst of the human soldiers, but he is stopped by Yoichi, who pleads with him not to harm anyone. Yoichi reminds Mika that they are all family, and Mika pushes him away but does not harm him. Shinya intervenes and impales Mika to stop him from taking Yu. Shinoa's demon protects Mika from further harm, and Shinoa instructs Mika to take Yu and run away. The rest of the squad stands with Shinoa to defend Mika and Yu, which is seen as a betrayal by some of the other soldiers. Tensions rise, and the situation becomes tense as some soldiers want to attack Mika and the others. Shinoa creates a path for Mika to escape with Yu and tells him to join them at the airport later. Mika is surprised to see friends defending him and Yu, and he remembers a happy memory from his past when he was with his orphanage family. Despite his initial doubt, Mika decides to trust Shinoa and takes Yu to leave with her help. As they escape, Mika is wounded and realizes that his vampire powers are not healing his injuries properly. Meanwhile, a large group of vampires attacks the human soldiers, leading to a devastating ambush. Shinya orders a retreat, but more vampire reinforcements are coming, making the situation dire. Mika carries Yu through the snowy streets, leaving a trail of blood as they escape from the chaos. The remaining members of the human army that was sent to kill vampire nobles in Nagoya are attacked by a large group of vampire reinforcements. Acting Commander Shinya orders a retreat to their rendezvous point at the airport. Shinoa's squad falls back, but Narumi is in shock over the deaths of 2 of their team members. They have no choice but to leave the deceased behind and escape. In another area, Mika is badly wounded and carries an unconscious Yu. His injuries are not healing properly, and he is running out of Kroll's blood vials that helped him survive as a vampire. Mika collapses to the ground, but he needs to tell something to Yu. However, Yu remains unconscious due to his demon transformation. Mika sees a young boy and contemplates drinking his blood to heal, but he stops when called a monster. He returns to Yu and holds him close. In Yu's mind, he regains consciousness, and Asuramaru speaks to him about his devotion to his loved ones. Yu wakes up, confused about his surroundings, and draws his sword when he hears noises. Mika lunges at Yu, but he manages to stop himself before hurting him. Mika is desperate for blood, but Yu offers his own blood to him. Mika resists but is in pain without blood. Yu blames himself for leaving Mika alone and apologizes. Mika regains control and tells Yu that he wasn't himself. Yu wants to help Mika by giving him his blood, and Mika struggles to resist but eventually gives in to his vampire instincts. Even when Yu thought there was no reason to live, he forced himself to stay alive, and now he's reunited with Mika. They both decide to survive together no matter the challenges they face. Yu reassures Mika that being a vampire doesn't matter to him, and he's even willing to find a way to turn him back into a human if it's what Mika wants. They share a heartfelt moment and laugh together. Yu credits his strength to Guren, even though Mika believes Guren is using him. However, Yu doesn't mind because Guren is like family to him. Mika, on the other hand, insists that he would never use Yu. They talk about the blood incident and joke about it, not taking it too seriously. Yu becomes concerned about their friends and family in trouble and asks Mika for help. Mika is shocked that Yu wants to go back to the humans, but Yu leaves anyway. Mika follows him, trying to convince him to stay. Mika reveals that the Japanese Imperial Demon Army has been conducting human experiments on both of them. But Yu doesn't seem to be bothered and continues on his way. Mika decides to protect Yu by drawing his sword, showing his determination to defend him at any cost. Yu and Mika continue their conversation as they travel together. Mika points out that Yu is being a hypocrite because he told Mika to survive even if he becomes a vampire. But now Yu is determined to save his family, even if it means risking his life. Mika insists on talking to Yu, but Yu is focused on saving the others and considers them his family. Mika finally reveals that he was saved by Shinoa and her friends, and Yu sees this as proof that they are good people. He convinces Mika to help him save them, and Mika agrees, saying he will only save those four. Yu thanks Mika and hugs him from behind. Shinoa and the rest of the Moon Demon Army reach the Nagoya airport, but it's deserted, and there are no vehicles for them to escape. Meanwhile, Yu and Mika have found a jeep and are driving to their destination. Mika finally shares the information he wanted to tell Yu. He explains that the humans are using Yu as a subject for a massive experiment, which has made him a target for both humans and vampires worldwide. This experiment's failure led to the deaths of all the adults and nearly caused the end of the world. In this part of the story, Yu questions if he is to blame for the near destruction of the world. Mika reassures him that it's not his fault. They were both victims of manipulation by humans. Mika reveals that the Hyakuya orphanage they lived in was actually a lab for the Seraph of the End experiment, which was taken over by the Japanese Imperial Demon Army. Mika expresses his distrust towards humans, describing them as greedy and unable to control their power. He wants to protect Yu from them and suggests they run away together to live somewhere far away and safe. Yu, however, believes he can't turn away from humans, as he is also one of them and wants to turn Mika back into a human. As they discuss their plans, Yu recalls a previous attempt to escape to paradise, which ended in failure and loss. Despite this, they both agree they need to escape. Yu wants to discuss the plan with his friends, as he trusts them and believes they can help. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to warplanes in the sky, and Kirito, a character, meets a test subject named Murai Kimazuki, who is in distress. The remaining members of the Moon Demon Army, who were sent to kill vampire nobles in Nagoya, have survived a big attack by vampires and reached Nagoya airport. However, they find that the aircraft they were supposed to use to escape is not there. Goshi tells acting commander Shinya that Guren had promised helicopters for their escape, but they are nowhere to be seen. Narumi is also unsure of what to do next, as vampires are closing in on them, and they have no other place to retreat to. Maido finds a letter in the flight control room, addressed to the Japanese Imperial Demon Army, which instructs them to wait. Meanwhile, tensions rise again as Shinoa defends Mika, a vampire, from her squad. Rika confronts Shinoa, angry that she is still alive after their squad members Yaoi and Kajiyama were killed in the previous vampire attack. In a fit of anger, Rika slaps Shinoa, but Shinoa signals her squad not to intervene. Rika blames Shinoa for the deaths of their comrades and threatens her with a sword, demanding she pay with her life for what happened. Shinoa steps in to stop the conflict between Rika and the others. Rika is crying and apologizes, begging for her friends back. Narumi takes charge and says he will handle the situation, but Shinya reminds him that it's not his responsibility. Narumi questions Shinya about what they will do for them after they followed him this far and lost their comrades and commander. He is frustrated that they are being told to wait and wonders if they are being left to die. Shinya explains that the order to wait and escape with the helicopter came from Lieutenant General Kirito, not Guren. Narumi is angry at the Hiragi family's abuse of power and decides to abandon the mission and go back to rescue Lieutenant Colonel Guren. Shigeru agrees with this plan, and Sayuri also joins in. They say goodbye to the others and leave to rescue Guren. Mito and Goshi choose to stay with Shinya and continue with the larger mission. The group is now divided, with some going to rescue Guren and others staying to follow the orders from Lieutenant General Kirito. Mitsuba asks Shinoa for advice on what to do, but Shinoa is focused on observing Shinya's actions. Narumi challenges Shinya, telling him to court-martial him if he disagrees with their decision. Shinya tells him to stop and explains that he wants them to abort the mission together and ignore orders from the higher-ups. Narumi, Mito, and Goshi are happy that the Moon Demon Company will reunite to rescue Guren. Shinoa also agrees with this choice. On another part of the battlefield, Crowley, a vampire noble, inspects the dead soldiers. He notices Krull Teeps, another powerful vampire noble, leading her forces. Crowley sees a vampire noble attacking Guren, who is tied up. Guren refuses to give in and withstands the attacks. Crowley intervenes, reminding the noble that Krull ordered not to kill Guren. However, the noble insists that Guren would be better off dead. Guren realizes that he needs to endure the beating to leak credible information and lead the vampires to Shinjuku. Farid, another vampire noble, joins the scene and greets Crowley. Crowley accuses Farid of leaking the locations of the nobles, including Guren's. Farid teases Crowley, claiming he sold out his friends. He admits that he gave away Crowley's location to divert suspicion from himself and his clique. Crowley acknowledges that he had fun and Farid thanks him for helping with the plan. Farid reveals to Crowley that there was another person orchestrating the operation, and that person is actually Guren himself. Meanwhile, Guren endures the interrogation by the vampire noble, who asks if he wants to die. In response, Guren spits in the noble's face and smirks. Enraged, the noble throws Guren to the ground with such force that the ground beneath him is crushed. Krull notices the commotion and sees Guren trying to say something, but the noble continues to attack him despite the intervention of another masked vampire noble. Farid explains to Crowley that Guren is a half-demon, almost becoming a complete demon. He reveals that Guren has two personalities, one being an idealist who wants to save his friends and comrades. During the beating, Guren seems to zone out and is joined by another presence. In his mind, Guren sees Maharu, his deceased ex-girlfriend, smiling and holding his head in her lap. She urges him to surrender to her, but Guren tells her to shut up, even though he lacks the strength to push her away. Farid explains that Guren's other personality is the result of being possessed by Maharu, who has become a demon. In Guren's mind, the sword he carries moves on its own and he grabs the vampire noble's boot. His eyes turn red, and the sword slices the noble apart, killing him as promised. Maharu appears beside him, holding his sword, and Guren instructs her to give it back to him. The other vampires watch in uncertainty as Guren displays this extraordinary power. Krull steps forward, aware of who she is dealing with. Possessed by Maharu, Guren attacks Krull, but she easily knocks him back and pins him against a wall. Krull orders the other vampires not to interfere as she confronts Guren alone. She believes that Guren is a messenger of Maharu, a person she made a deal with before the world collapsed. However, Guren reveals that Maharu is actually dead and that he is possessed by a demonic form of her within his cursed gear. Krull realizes she has been deceived and needs the Seraph of the End experiment to succeed. Guren tells her the testing site is at the airport, and she directs her forces there. Meanwhile, Farid and Crowley observe the situation and discuss the transformation of the world that is about to begin. As Shinoa's group prepares to rescue Guren, they see warplanes approaching, which turn out to be the Demon Army's transportation aircraft. Kirito, a member of the Hiragi family, steps out of the aircraft, surprising everyone. He thanks them for completing the mission and declares that they will achieve victory over the vampires. But Narumi and Shinoa sense something is not right and remain ready for a possible fight. Shinya confronts Kirito and questions his declaration of total victory when vampire nobles are approaching. Kirito demands to know where Guren is, and Shinya tells him that vampires have captured Guren. Kirito is shocked and accuses Shinya of trying to conspire against him. Shinya is confused by Kirito's statements, and Kirito realizes that Shinya is unaware of Guren's true nature. Kirito reveals that Guren has always tried to protect his comrades and looks up to Shinya as a close friend. He dismisses Shinya and focuses on his plan, which is separate from the Demon Company's plan. AI brings a crate adorned with defensive spell tags, and Shinya, Narumi, and the others become wary. Kirito orders them to disarm and comply with his plan. Shinya tries to reason with Kirito and asks him to let them go, given the dangerous situation they were in behind enemy lines. Surprisingly, Kirito agrees to overlook Narumi's rebellious attitude, but he reveals that he is going to die soon and orders his hidden plan to begin. The crate opens, and sharp, linked rods with arrow points stab out in all directions. Narumi uses his cursed gear to protect himself and his squad from the rods, but they eventually break through his defense. Many members of the demon army, including Rika and Iwasaki, are fatally impaled by the rods. Sayuri and Maito try to fight off the rods, but the situation becomes dire. Narumi confronts Kirito, who claims that the deaths are for the advancement of humanity and for justice. They engage in battle, and Kirito's spears attack Narumi, but Kimazuki and Yoichi intervene to protect him. Yoichi's shot knocks back Kirito, but he remains unharmed and continues to deflect attacks. Kirito spares Shinoa's life since she is technically a Hiragi, but he then tells her that she can die. The situation becomes even more dangerous, and the Demon Company members face a formidable and deadly opponent in Kirito. Shinoa is targeted by the deadly chains, but Yu arrives just in time to save her. Mika is with him and warns that humans are attacking each other. They witness the horrifying aftermath of the massacre caused by the chains, with the rods still impaled through the bodies of the deceased soldiers. Yu confronts Kirito and demands to know why he is doing this to his comrades. Kimazuki tries to target the source of the rods, but their attacks are intercepted by the container. The squad members use their cursed gear to defend against further attacks and decide to retreat. As they try to escape, they are met with a large number of vampires descending from the sky, blocking their way. The masked noble orders the vampires to kill all the humans, while Kirito declares they will exterminate the vampires. Shinya assures Yu that this chaos is a chance for them to escape. Mika agrees and suggests they take this opportunity to get away. Goshi and the rest of the squad decide to stay behind to protect the kids while they escape. Shinya helps clear a path for them by firing his rifle cursed gear. The kids start running through the battlefield, with Yu leading the way and Mika close behind. Yu is determined to protect everyone and fights off attacking vampires as they run. Kimazuki notices that Yu is getting too far ahead in his eagerness to kill vampires. Eventually, Yu reaches the other side of the battlefield, where he unexpectedly comes face to face with Guren, who is now with the vampire forces. Yu is relieved to see Guren safe, as they had to leave him behind before. However, to Yu's shock, Guren's eyes look suspiciously red, and Guren suddenly attacks him with his sword. Yu is relieved to see Guren, but Guren, who is possessed by Maharu, tries to attack him. Mika steps in to protect Yu and fights Guren. The Shinoa squad rushes to see what's happening. The fight between Guren and Mika ends with Mika being thrown onto Yu, knocking them both down. At the same time, Kirito gives orders for an operation to start. Guren commands his sword to drink the blood of humans, vampires, and demons. Yu realizes something is wrong with Guren and questions him about it. Guren mentions the Seraph of the End and starts attacking vampires and humans. The chains coming from the box where the angel is kept spread across the battlefield, piercing the bodies of the people Guren kills. The box explodes, and Mirai emerges as an angel. Kirito orders to capture the angel, who turns out to be Shiho Kimazuki's sister, Mirai. The angel summons the fifth trumpet and blows into it, causing a powerful sound that changes the landscape. Spikes emerge around the angel, and chaos ensues on the battlefield. Shiho becomes furious and tries to stop what's happening, but Guren stabs him. Yu and Mika both try to fight Guren, but Guren ends up stabbing Yu through the chest. As Yu lies injured, the Devil of Destruction, Abaddon, emerges from Mirai's back. Abaddon starts wreaking havoc on the battlefield, with horsemen killing both humans and vampires. Shinoa urges her squad to escape, but Kimazuki, injured and desperate to save his sister, can't get far. Mika tries to carry the injured Yu to safety, but they are attacked by horsemen. Despite defeating the attackers, Mika gets injured. Yu wants to save Guren and his other friends, but Mika insists that Yu should leave him behind and save the others, considering himself as Yu's only family. Mika's wounds cannot heal within Abaddon's barrier, so he urges Yu to go without him. Yu, however, refuses to leave Mika and wants to confront Abaddon, the creature causing all the chaos. Yu is willing to sacrifice himself and uses the power of the trumpets. Asiramaru, the demon inside Yu's cursed gear, calls him a traitor for seeking more power, but Yu doesn't care about the risk of losing his humanity. He blows into the second trumpet, causing a powerful explosion of fire. Afterwards, Yu emerges as the King of Salt, and his appearance drastically changes. He fights against Abaddon and the Horsemen, turning them into pillars of salt with his new abilities. Despite suffering injuries and losing one of his wings, Yu continues to fight and manages to defeat Abaddon. restoring the battlefield to normal. Mirai is freed from her chains, but Kirito strikes Yu with lightning, causing him to collapse. Yu then clashes swords with Kirito, but Asuromaru intervenes and knocks Yu unconscious. Yu's appearance changes again, with horns sprouting from his head. Shinoa squad arrives to rescue him from those trying to capture him. As Mika regains his ability to heal, he and Krull try to retrieve Yu. Crowley attacks Krull, but she defeats him. Farid then holds Krull in a headlock and bites her. Mika tries to help, but Krull orders him to save Yu instead. Krull eventually goes unconscious, and Farid takes charge, declaring her crimes of treason and assuming control. Gurren orders Narumi to hand over Yu, but Narumi refuses and creates a barrier to buy them time to escape. Kirito tries to stop them, but they are blocked by the vampires. Shinya confronts Gurren and realizes he is possessed. Yu and his group continue running, leaving Mirai behind for now. Shinoa informs the pursuing soldiers that they are withdrawing from the demon army. Mika clears the path for them to escape. 4 months later, the humans have won the battle, and they plan their next move. Vampires watch as Leskar arrives in a helicopter. Yu, Mika, Shinoa, and the rest of the group leave a small house dressed in different clothes. They plan to rescue Mirai and Gurren and head back to Sanguinum. They talk like a close-knit family. Suddenly, Yu walks into the water, seemingly possessed, and states that it's starting to rain. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.